Page 17. Big private storage rooms instead of little money hoards. The chronicler also mentions the general custom of the Baratonians in the matter of private storage. In every house, a special storage room was built, usually the pride of the lady of the house. These storage rooms were filled with the products for consumption. Instead of private money hoards, people had a store of provisions of all kinds, as money could not be hoarded without loss. Every housewife favored the possession of provisions just as much as the possession of money reserves. Money and provisions were equally good and bad. Provisions were bought not in minimum quantities by pounds and quarts, but by barrels, bags, and bales in the original packing. As larger quantities were involved at a time, this resulted in a simplification of business, the businessmen acting as brokers and agents rather than as storekeepers. Their expenses of operation must have been very low. The wares could reach the consumer in Barataria burdened with little commercial cost. The full proceeds of labor. Now we begin to understand why in Barataria everything was so cheap, as mentioned in the beginning of our story. The goods were not cheap because low wages were paid, but simply because the production and exchange of wares were not burdened with interest and high commercial costs, as with us. If you consider that with us, for example, the cost of transportation is more than 50% interest, and that by the elimination of interest, the tariff rates of the railroads could be reduced by 50%. If you consider that with a general interest rate of 5% in USA or Canada, in Central or South America, in Australia or Asia, in Africa or Europe, a sum equal to the entire cost price of all that is built there in forms of houses, railroads, factories, constructions of all kinds, roads, gardens, forests, fields, power plants, etc., flows over the counters of the capitalist every 20 years. You will understand why our island received the significant name of Barataria. Practical Christianity. I must refrain from communicating a detailed account of the social life which develops from these economic conditions of the Baratonians. Suffice it to mention here that in Barataria, everyone was permitted to live and act according to Christian teachings without finding himself in distress. The number of those in need, compared with the well-to-do, was so insignificant that it was impossible to get into difficulties by the practice of active Christianity. Without embarrassment, everyone could say of himself, I am living according to the teachings of Christ as far as it concerns my relationship to my neighbor. Currency reform with hoardable money. Thus were the conditions when one day the Baratonians were surprised by an appeal addressed to them by Carlos Marquez. Citizens, our money has certainly stood the test as medium of exchange. The value of the potatoes has been transferred as crystallized abstract of labor onto the seeds of the Pinus moneta, and adheres to it like the sweat of the gold miners of King Solomon sticks to the gold of Ophir. Thanks to this transferred value of potatoes to the nuts, exchange of products is taking place without friction, even better than with the gold of Solomon. We have never had a collapse, a crisis, or unemployment. Strange to say, no interest, surplus value has accrued from private property, and I have not been able to perceive up to now any germination of the idea of surplus value. But this does not alter the fact that with the present nut money, we must do without one of the principal uses of sound money, namely, to act as a value conserver, value maintainer, or store of value. How many losses accrue to our housewives solely by the possession of the storerooms? How much work is caused by their maintenance? Millions of our money are involved here. All these costs could be saved if our money served not only as medium of exchange, but also as a medium of saving, a value preserver or store of value. The reason why our money is not a medium of saving at the present time is that we exchange the nuts of the Pinus moneta according to weight, and this weight is constantly decreasing. Now, if we would exchange these nuts according to their volume instead of their weight, the value of our money would remain constant, because, as I have found, the decrease of the weight of the nuts is not transferred to their volume. This volume remains practically unchanged. A measure of nuts remains after 10 years still a measure of nuts. Now, 1 pound of fresh nuts of the Pinus moneta forms exactly 1/10 of a measure. All that is necessary, therefore, is a law according to which the tenth of a measure takes the place of the pound, and then we shall have what we need: the fixation of value, the value quality linked with the generally recognized advantages of our money. Citizens, come and vote for this currency reform, which will save us many millions. What consequences? In this meeting, the teacher, Diego Martinez, stood up and said, "Dear fellow citizens, I rise to oppose the proposal of Marquez. Our economic system is, as he admits himself, in perfect order. It is therefore not advisable to tamper with it. We do not know what reactions such deep-seated changes will have. Money is called nervus rerum, and for excellent reasons. True, by adopting the suggestion of Marquez, we shall realize his aims, but he did not tell us at what cost and at whose expense we shall enjoy the advantages offered. He said that the housewives will save the expense caused by the storing of provisions. But who shall, from now on, store these provisions, and who is to carry the expense? This should be investigated and determined. In any case, I draw attention to a discrepancy between the nature of the Marquez money and the nature of the wares for which money has to serve as medium of exchange, a discrepancy from which we would have to expect the most serious consequences in view of the fact that money must be considered as the nervus rerum. Of what nature these consequences will be, I cannot foretell at the moment. Our economic system is running so smoothly that hardly any one of us has found it necessary to investigate the laws of this economic system. If such investigation had been made, probably the theoretical proof would have been furnished that, as I suspect, the quality of imperishability which we are anxious to give our money is fundamentally the cause of interest from which we have fortunately escaped with our money, a fact which Marquez, as he admits, cannot explain. Fellow citizens, mistrust the proposed reform, decline it, or demand from Carlos Marquez that he now explain on whom, from now on, the cost of merchandise storage will fall. Furthermore, he must satisfy us that those interest-free loans will still be possible, to which the prosperous conditions of our economic system must be traced. I confidently deny it because from the very moment that the saver can leave his money in his safe without loss, he will lose the urge to keep money circulating, which made the interest-free loan possible.